Budget and Economic Planning of Nigeria, Abubakar Atiku Bagudu joins me live from our Abuja studio. Honorable Minister, thank you for joining us on the program this evening. Let's begin with the controversy surrounding the 2024 budget. The Senate has now debunked Mr. Ningi's allegations of budget padding and suspended him for 3 months. But why do you think allegations of this nature continue to mar our budgeting process?
Well, thank you for inviting me, and good evening, and congratulations, because this is my first time in your Abuja studio. The appropriation process starts from our Constitution. The Constitution creates the legislature and the executive, and we borrowed our Constitution, or rather our Constitution is modeled after that of the United States of America, where the powers of appropriation have been distributed between the executive and legislature. The president, or at the state level, a state governor, submit proposals to the assembly, in the case of Mr. President, to the National Assembly. And both the two chambers, they are by law entitled to consider these proposals independently, both the Senate and the House of Representatives. And in all the cases, both chambers distribute the proposals to respective committees that do public hearings and use their knowledge acquired from oversight functions and expectations of constituencies and public in order to determine what outcome they want. We have to know that why choosing democracy? Democracy has its own opportunity cost. One of such is this, that the appropriation process is determined largely by the conduct, in the case of the federal, by the conduct of the National Assembly, consisting of over 460 members, with their own pressures acting on them, with expectations from public acting on them. So not surprisingly, since our democracy started in 1999, the budget proposals submitted by the executive have diverged from what has been passed by the National Assembly. In fact, the 2024 divergence is smaller than that of the 2023 divergence. Former President Buhari submitted a budget proposal of about 20 trillion in 2023. The National Assembly passed 21.83 trillion, which is about 1.8 trillion. This year, 1.2 trillion was additional from what President Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu submitted. And it was explained because we submitted a proposal with an exchange rate of 750 naira to a dollar, and the National Assembly, in its wisdom, increased the exchange rate to 800 to a dollar, thereby generating more naira. And the National Assembly also increased the threshold, the burden, the contribution of government-owned enterprises to the budget, thereby generating more naira. And once more naira was generated, this more money was allocated to the judiciary, to the National Assembly, as well as MDAs, who in any case were looking for more. Even though Mr. President submitted an appropriation proposal of 27.5 trillion, that does not represent the scale of demand that he faces or we all face. But that is our consistent with his stand that we must do what is realistic. That is what we believe we can be able to accommodate and implement.
Honorable Minister, you mentioned that lawmakers have the right to increase a budget line and that no law stops them from inserting constituency projects. But being a senator, you have been a senator yourself, do you think this system gives too much appropriation powers to the National Assembly?
Well, I don't know whether too much, but the reality is that our Constitution gives more power to the National Assembly as well as state assemblies in the appropriation process. Mind you, Nigerians supported the amendment that says even where a bill is passed into law, it is passed by the National Assembly, if in 30 days it was not assented to by Mr. President, the National Assembly have the right to override that veto and put it in. So essentially, they determine the legislation. But what has been what happened, particularly in 2024, was remarkable. Many members of the executive have National Assembly experience. So we engaged them, we lobbied them that we should do whatever we want, whatever we need to do consistent with our priorities, consistent with our agenda, so that we can serve Nigerian people better. It's a work in progress. Government is not a finished product. The process has been improving, but yes, there are things that can be done better. But that is not to say the budget itself is the power to spend. There are other processes involved. There are public procurement processes involved. Mr. President had directed the investigative agencies, ICPC, EFCC, to also the Auditor General's office to ensure that they get involved with budget implementation. What is different under President Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is that whatever is appropriated will be implemented. Otherwise, the money will not be spent.
All right. So, the good thing is that many of you working with this government have National Assembly experience. As a matter of fact, it's the first time we're having a president and a vice president who used to be members of the National Assembly. But this budget padding allegation has remained on the front burner of public discussion, and many Nigerians have called for an investigation into the matter. Is there a sense to which you agree that these allegations need to be further investigated, not to jeopardize the credibility of the legislature and also the anti-corruption perceptions under this administration?
Well, the executive, we have been very clear. We submitted an appropriation of 27.503 trillion. The National Assembly, in its wisdom, passed a legislation of 28.7 trillion, and that was what was signed into law. That is what is being implemented. I had cause earlier to even say, what do we mean when we say padding? I really, it's a term that has been given a negative form, because as it relates to budget, if by padding we mean an increase in a budget line item, I still insist the National Assembly have the right to do so. And sometimes it is expedient to do so. Equally, if it is introducing a new item of expenditure that was not submitted in the budget proposal, again, the National Assembly have the right to do so. Indeed. What I thought we should be focusing our mind on is to put pressure that National Assembly members who come from different backgrounds, who come from different constituencies that have different needs, but putting pressure on them, are appropriately sensitized that there is a necessary minimum of cooperation between the executive. And most of what we submitted by way of appropriation had been accepted by the National Assembly. In fact, has been increased, so enabling the ministries to be able to do better. And like I said, it is this increase that the National Assembly did in the 2024 budget is in favor of the judiciary, in favor of National Assembly, as well as the executive, particularly ministries that are desirous of more funding.
So Honorable Minister,
I think
for many Nigerians, I think the concern here really is a function of accountability, transparency, and corruption perception. So now we know that House of Reps get 60 billion and senators get 40 billion for constituency project. Well, you can imagine how the average Nigerian feels when a senator stands up and say some ranking senators get as much as 500 million naira. And then, you know, for a trust, you know.
I'm not a spokesman for the National Assembly, but I invite people who ask those questions to study the United States Congress. Even in the United States Congress, senators have status, different status based on their length of service. In fact, there are committees that are chaired by a particular, it takes a particular level of experience and being in the Congress or the Senate before you can chair those committees, appropriation being one of them, even the membership. So where our legislation created a self-regulatory body, the National Assembly is not supervised by the executive when it comes to committee assignment. They have their own rules that they develop and pass. So it's one of the choices of democracy. Maybe our political scientists, civil society organizations can interrogate this issue, maybe to come with, we are in the process of a constitutional amendment. Maybe if somebody felt better legislation can cure this, but certainly the choice of democracy sometimes come with vesting powers to institutions that maybe only change in legislation can change.
All right. Honorable Minister, I want to let you go early so you can go and break your fast. But let's talk about the economy, if we can, in a few minutes. You've been talking about 100 billion naira as Energy Transition Fund to provide the much talked about
130 billion.
Oh, it's 130
billion.
The economy currently is not where we want it. What form of interventions do you think Nigerians can look forward to in interim, for instance, in the next 6 months?
Well, a lot of them have been contained in either the supplementary appropriation, where the first appropriation of 100 billion was made available. I'm sure many residents of Abuja can see the 100 billion made available to FCT during the appropriation being put to use, as well as security gains and infrastructure gains that are taking place, as well as the promises made to labor and other Nigerians. Mr. President directed a wholesale review of the National Social Investment Program, but he has also authorized that those who have finished from the National Youth Service Corps and can no longer find jobs should be incorporated into a social security scheme so that they are not without income, as well as others in the with other certifications. So these are all novel ideas, transformative, to ensure that everyone is and the pains of transition are being addressed. But by and large, the strategy of reforming the economy so that it works for the majority is working. We are facing initial challenges that are not uncommon with such bold measures. And that is why we have a number of supportive measures, interventionists are being undertaken as we speak. Mr. President had directed, and I believe food is being delivered to all the states of the Federation to further intervene and support vulnerable and support lower food prices, as well as support for production. The investors, one of the challenges of reform is that it's a balancing act. We have to take measures that the investors will appreciate, so that they will build confidence. And we are glad in our strategy that the investment world, the rating agencies have acknowledged our reforms and are encouraging, and we are seeing light at the end of the tunnel in terms of more investment flows into the country. And we believe we'll have more resources to address the infrastructure gaps, the educational challenges that we face, as well as all the other items of our renewed hope agenda.
Indeed. For the average Nigerian, the expectation is to see the implication of all of this government policy on their purchasing power, on inflation, on employment, and on their quality of life. So we're counting on all of these promises and looking forward to see it impact on the average Nigerian. A big thank you, Honorable Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Abubakar Atiku Bagudu. It's your first time. We're hoping that you will come back to TVC very soon.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for your time. That's our